if you are doing love the way that love is here to be done, you're going to feel some shit when the people that you have allowed yourself to connect with and attach to are no longer in their bodies. You will. And you can absolutely choose, make that choice, conscious or unconscious. It's largely unconscious, to over time increasingly shut yourself down in response to that reality. Or you can choose to take what I believe is the invitation on the table from your body, who knows that wholeness and vitality is your birthright up until the moment that you leave, up until the moment that your body retires. And wrapped up in that wholeness and vitality is the ability to continue to love well and love deep and attach truly. Hi, we're Jamie and Joan, two humans and bodies who take care of bodies for a living.
We created this podcast as practical medicine for bodies living through this disembodied time.
We want to invite you to come sit with us and experience the beautiful, loving, complex person that is your body.
Hello.
Hello. Here we are. Hello. It's our last episode of our first season of Experiential Anatomy, our last full episode, our last time sitting down together and conversing while looking at each other and then having that recorded for public consumption. How are you feeling?
It feels so good. I feel kind of in awe that we did it, that we're here.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is already out in the world. You know, yeah. I've had already such really beautiful conversations with people I know and read comments of people I don't know about what they've enjoyed about the episodes and insights that have been gained. And that's like so exciting.
Yeah.
And it feels good that there is an endpoint. Mm-hmm. Speaking of the topic of this episode.
Truly, yes.
It feels like a beautiful time to end and have some, you know, kind of restoration and space away because I still have lots of gas in the tank, you know, so it's I love quitting before I need to.
Yes.
It's actually my favorite thing to like leave a thing before I hate it, whether it's like a work thing or a creative thing or whatever. Yeah. Like, how do you leave something well? And so that's how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about it?
I feel really similarly. I quote this often. I heard Rob Bell many years ago, if you're not paying attention, you can turn something that was meant to be a graduation into a divorce. Yeah, I know. Everyone has that. I had that reaction when I first heard it. Whenever I say it, I get that same reaction from people. It's brilliant. And it's because you understand it like in your body energetically what he means by that. There's this celebratory energy to graduating, and there's this, not always, I mean, there are conscious uncoupling divorce situations, which I would maybe just call those graduations when both people are in a really good mood about it.
Yes.
So I think about that a lot, and, you know, the willingness to, like you said, like end something before it sours. And like Rob said, you kind of have to be paying attention to how you're feeling in the endeavor itself. And I've been paying attention to how I've been feeling in this endeavor, as have you, since that's kind of part of it. Is at the beginning of doing this, every time we sit down to record, we talk about how we've been paying attention to how we've been feeling. And it's definitely a both and for me too. I feel really grateful. I don't feel like I'm collapsing at the end of a marathon by any means. And that's a really good sign for someone who has historically just overworked and thought that that was productivity. This has felt really fun and generative and exciting the whole time. And so it feels good to be taking a break at this moment. And then even from that energy of like, I'm not exhausted and I'm still excited and we are stepping back from that place, as we'll talk about at the end of this episode, we have a ton of really fun ideas for what we're going to be sharing with everyone in between our seasons, in between this season and next season, which next season will air in the spring, probably sometime in April. And so between now and then, we've got a ton of really great stuff. So we'll tell you all more about that. But as for now, let's talk about how we've been feeling and what we've been noticing. Joan, how have you been experiencing your anatomy this week, our graduation week?
In our graduation week. Well, I love calling it that now,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels so good. I've been having like a mix of experiences, especially slightly earlier in the week, Monday in particular. I was definitely still coming down / coming back to my more regulated state after the week in Florida and all that it offered
Gatorland.
me. Gatorland and diet culture and all the things. And
that's a good book title. Gatorland and diet culture.
That I'll pick that up for sure.
For it. Me too.
Yes. I'm also just because often my sleep was interrupted there because of littles waking up in the middle of the night, etc. So really was not as fully rested as one could be. Definitely family trip, not vacation vibes. Sure. The distinction.
Totally.
So that was one. So that's there's sort of the wave of that coming back up in my body, and the other wave of what is rising in my body that's actually been in my body for many months, but is now reaching a crescendo, is that I am preparing for my Eras Tour concert date, which is on Saturday.
Oh
and
my
we're
God.
recording this on Wednesday. So in 3 days, I will be looking at Taylor Swift with my eyeballs and 49,000 other
I'm realizing
people.
you're on the cusp of a deep spiritual transformation. I can't wait to re-meet you on the other side of this.
That is what I have been saying to everyone, including people who I don't typically talk. I'm like, I'm about to have a religious / spiritual experience. I'm ready. And they're like, are
Joan
you okay?
is
And I'm
having
like,
her
no,
first
not
psychedelic
really.
journey, totally sober.
Yeah. I am preparing. And so I'm literally preparing. I'm singing pretty much exclusively her songs this week. I had a really cute little perfectionist type A panic on Monday of I still don't know all the words to all of her songs. Do you know how many songs she has? Anyway.
Thousands, I think, at this point.
So many. I don't know, but
prolific.
many.
Yeah.
She's so prolific. Yeah. And so, but I do know so many words, and it's so fun to do them. I'm going by myself. I actually am aware of people that
Joan,
I know
that's awesome. That's
my
favorite
the best
part
way.
Of this.
Yes. I can't imagine doing it another way because I'm not familiar with someone who I'm also close to who's as obsessed.
Sure.
And so it's I just need to go on my own on my pilgrimage.
Okay. I was just going to say, I was like, your Taylor Swift concert is my 4 months in Europe. It's you got to go
untethered.
You have to go just watch yourself do the thing you love by yourself and then become who you become on the other side of that solo endeavor. This is okay. Yes. I mean it even more now. I was already excited for you to have this experience, but now that I know that you're doing it alone, so cool. Yes. So cool.
Thank you. It's so great. And so I just love there's versions of it that feel my old self would be actually worrying a lot and really living in anxiety in my mind and picturing what could go wrong. And I had little bits of that, but I just invite those parts to dissolve. I tend to them. And then I just sink back into I'm already enjoying the concert and I'm not even there. This is what makes the high price tag I paid. I've already gotten such a great experience and I'm not even there yet. And so it's just living the fun of it ahead of time is so fun.
Wow. Yeah, I truly mean it. I can't wait to meet you on the other side of this.
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. I'll send a debrief voice memo for sure.
That's exactly what I'm expecting.
Probably processing lots of them. So, okay.
Perfect.
Well, so that's me, Jamie. How have you been experiencing your anatomy this week?
Like that. I'll say it short up front before I get into it. I don't think I have explicitly kind of stated this here on this podcast, but I am a step parent now. I'm a stepmom. Welcome to the stepmom club. And it is complicated and seriously rewarding and also very fucked up at times. And I'll just speak really candidly. I vacillate moment to moment internally, this doesn't come out in any dysregulated way, which I am enormously proud of myself for. And that like Tyler reflects to me a lot, that he's just like impressed and proud. And I'm so grateful to my body and God for that. But internally, I'm often vacillating back and forth between this, this like state of what the hell was I doing with my time in my life before this? Like parenting is so profound. Like what was I doing? Like what, and why did I think it was important by any means? Like this is so cool and so interesting and so important. And then like 6 seconds later, I'm like, you guys are ruining my life. I have no access to myself anymore. And this is, and what needs to be taken note of in what I just said is that I am aware that the way that that kind of victim statement comes out is that you guys are doing this to me, which is just profoundly untrue. I chose this. I'm here because I chose it. And so that is I'll say we've had a challenging week here in the house, and coming in cold to an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. I've been here. We've been cohabiting half of their life and half of my life for the last 3 months. And so there are some things that are like, we're getting into some good grooves and rhythms, and then other things that are just now revealing themselves as like difficult and challenging. And how that manifested in my body, the two things I'll say is that like literally this time yesterday, I did not know if I would be able to sit down and have a coherent conversation with you. I woke up yesterday morning like 3 times more tired than I went to sleep. And then it de-escalated from there, like, you know. And what happened is that number one, I took stock of and notice of quite literally what was happening in my physical body, which is that my stomach was just like clenched in a way that my stomach used to be clenched all the time prior to my sabbatical. So when my stomach is clenched that way, when my jaw is clenched that way, when I don't have an appetite, when I'm not digesting food, when I'm functioning how I was functioning almost exclusively in like 2021, I'm like, something's up. And it's a me thing. It's not an anyone else thing. It's not a these two kids thing. It's not I'm not a victim to the environment around me. Something's going on in me and how I'm experiencing this environment, how I'm experiencing this situation, the story I'm telling myself. And so the surest sign that I'm moving in the direction of some really unhelpful powerlessness and helplessness is like stomach stuff. Like my stomach is in knots. There is an energy of stuckness in my I'm unconsciously refusing to digest the life that I am living in. And so that was happening too. And my abdomen has not been that distended in probably years. And so these cues, my body was giving me these really not subtle, very obvious cues that like she needed me to like talk with her. And how she and I talk with one another is we do some really intense resilience building activities. And so my morning yesterday was spent just like moving really slowly, intentionally taking really deep breaths, like enjoying the kind of quiet spaciousness of the house that had been like so chaotic previously, and just kind of reclaiming my body in my space in a calm way. And then I took myself to the gym and I moved some fucking energy fiercely. And that part, that resilience building is really like the biggest key for me is like, if I want to shift out of a story or a state of false like powerlessness or victimhood, I go do something really hard in my body and I do it. And then I sit with myself on the other side of doing it and I go, I can do anything. So I did that. And then I wrote my morning pages at like 5 p.m. after that. And I was like, all right, here's what's going to change. And it wasn't like here's what's going to change about the behavior of the other people I live with. I was like, here's what I am doing. I am waking up this much earlier. I am reinforcing this way of being. I'm modeling this instead of what I've been it's like, here is what I am going to bring to the table that's different. And like I say a lot, and it's so applicable here, like, and I hope people understand what I mean by this. None of that was my idea. Like, had I not gotten into my body through the vehicle of these practices, both the still practices, the calming practices, the regulating practices, and the intense, challenging, resilience building physical practices, those thoughts would not have occurred to me. Those new thought patterns, the dissolving of those old unhelpful stories and them being replaced with like the truth, the reality of what was really going on would not have happened. I know that for a fact. And so how I have been experiencing my anatomy this week is just increasing distress signals from my body telling me, hey, this environment and what's going on here is stressing me out. And those increasing distress signals also being my body saying the way you are responding to, like internally, the way you are storytelling to yourself about what's going on here is not helpful. And you need to knock it off. Lovingly, kindly, I'm going to call you in and tell you we need to knock it off. So like, let's go spend some time together. Let's go do a ton of hard things and then process it and then come back and start again. And so I feel way better today. And the environment was reflective of that, like last night and this morning. Like I feel very clear that in this role as a parent, and in particular, this role as, I'm not their mom, but I am their stepmom and I am a mother figure in this family unit. Yeah. So much of the tone in the house, in the home is set by me and how I am responding wordlessly, just whatever energy is being emitted from what I am or am not saying. What I'm getting back from my environment and the other living beings in my environment, including like my cat, like that is a mirror to what I am holding inside of my own body. And that is my responsibility. This is 180 degrees different than where I was literally at this time yesterday. And it was just through returning back to my practices, returning back to my body, and letting her be my teacher about what is more helpful.
So glad that you do feel so much better today. Like,
me too.
Well done to both of
Everyone's
you.
glad that I feel better today.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So I think it would be helpful to talk through the connection between last week and this week. So how do the notions of our bodies being constantly and utterly devoted and committed to our wholeness, their own, and therefore our wholeness and vitality, and the notion that all of our bodies are going to die. When I think about it, I think the gap, there's probably multiple gaps, but one gap is something that I experience a lot, especially in my profession as a physician, which is people think if they are healthy enough, they are going to avoid dying.
Yeah. Interesting.
Even avoid illness, right?
Yeah.
And that's not a silly thing that they came up with. That's like marketed to people.
Yes, absolutely.
And people are blamed. It's like, well, you smoked, so that's why, or you ate sugar, so that's why you have diabetes. And so I feel like I'm constantly like, that's not it's way more complex than that. And so I think that's a piece of it. So when people think of what part of it is like listening to the last episode of what we mean by wholeness and vitality, and that it's not about absence of disease or absence of sensations in your body. And the thing that I have witnessed is like, I have been able and had the privilege of witnessing multiple bodies dying, because part of the work I've done just in my training and also now is I do offer palliative care to my patients. So I've witnessed death. And I've witnessed how the body is actually continuing, all the different systems are continuing to offer life, offer perpetual forward motion until each of them runs out of that. But that, you know what I mean? So it's actually so beautiful. And sometimes it doesn't seem beautiful. And I'm aware of people sometimes have had really hard experiences watching someone die. So like, it's okay that was true for you, but even some of the things that sometimes disturb people of, say, the way that breathing changes when you die, some
Mm-hmm.
of it sounds so different and kind of scary. And one way to look at those breathing patterns is it's sort of this ebb and flow of systems reaching their natural end and continuing to
Yeah.
function as best they can with these
Yes.
processes of aliveness. It's really,
Yeah.
in my view now, like really beautiful to
Yeah.
watch.
Yes.
I wish I could think of like an analogy of maybe you'll have, but like it's just sort of that slowly ebbing away.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the most profound things I've ever witnessed and
Mm.
experienced.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my answer to my own question.
Yeah.
I wonder, yeah, what resonates in that for you, or what would you say to someone who's like, how can a body be
Mm-hmm.
committed to wholeness and vitality and also die? Like, what are you
Yeah.
talking about? You know?
Yes. Yeah. Man, so many wonderful things in what you just said there. I think the first thing I'll say is that what you just described does, to me, feel very reflective of and affirming of the ethic that I hold about bodies, which really, again, the kind of crescendo of the bullet points of the cumulative ethic that I hold of bodies is that bodies are 100% of the time committed to wholeness and vitality, even up to the moment that living matter retires itself from the equation. And the way that you just articulated that from your specific perspective as someone who is, a trained physician and has like been, so the way you look at bodies, and then the fact that you have been in the room as bodies have said, my time is up. There's just something so profound about the data you have on like the raw facts of what is going on there is that the body is still committed to, just like Matthew Sanford says, like the body is like committed to going on living 100% of the time, even up to the moment that like certain specific things shift just slightly and the organism of living matter cannot continue functioning as a whole unit. Even up to that point, the vast majority of what is going on in the living matter is still life. It is still wholeness. It is still just overflowing with vitality, still all the time, 100% of the time. And that's a love story right there. Like that is this is like a reason why I'm just so enamored with bodies, and not necessarily just in the esoteric sense of when I talk about my body being a person I am in communication with, which, really could be understood as my new stand-in word for God. Sure. Like body is unitive consciousness as much as body is body to me, actual body. And I love that you're like at the beginning of this, you were like, we actually bodies are going to die, because that is really, I don't know where we go, like our consciousness. I don't know what happens. I have landed on the story that I'm going back to wherever I came from. And I don't think it was scary there before. So I'm not really afraid of going back to where I came from. And so I love the way you said that, because it is, again, that precise language of my body is going to die. I am not going to die. I don't know what I'm going to do once I leave her. But I do know that years ago, I had this moment that I vividly remember laying in bed, getting ready to fall asleep, and just the visceral awareness that one day I will be separated from her permanently, forever. I don't know if my consciousness is going to come back in some, I don't know what happened, but I have this body now, and I will never have this body again. I will never be existing in this body again. And after just like decades of like avoiding her, hating her, whatever it is I was doing before, the budding newness of this loving relating with her And then the awareness that at some point it was going to go away, it like caught in my throat and I just started sobbing because I was like, I'm learning how to love you. And the feeling was, I'm going to miss you so much. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if like wherever my consciousness is going after I leave her, if I will have the ability to miss or long for, I don't know. But it felt so true in that moment and beautiful and unifying in that moment to be like, I love you so much that, and I'm learning to love you so much that the feeling I have in my body right now is that it's going to be hard to be parted from you. Largely the removal of any sort of fear or like resistance to the inevitability of that happening has made my ability to be all here in my body so much more possible because it's this awareness of like every moment is passing, every moment, every moment, every moment, every moment. This moment's gone. This one's gone. It's just like that keeps happening until she retires from this position. But what you said at the beginning of your reflection of like, a lot of times what we see happening with people is from that unconscious desire to pretend like our living matter will not die. There is this like obsessive orientation towards trying to like live right, quote unquote, or like live healthy to try and cheat it in some way. And what I have found, what I've seen and observed both in my own life previously and in the lives of many other people is when we're living that way, where we believe death is this horrible thing that's going to happen to us as opposed to like our living matter will retire and, we'll go back to wherever we came from. And so I want to try and like pretend as if my living matter is not going to retire. So I will try and be perfect in some way now. What that actually ends up doing, the fascinating result, actual tangible impact of that is that we end up being in thousands of different ways barely alive while we're living. Whether that is we are on a host of pharmaceuticals that are just the cocktail of which is really not helping us like access our wholeness and vitality, or we are so oriented towards like, in the kind of wellness space of like the biohacking and the I think you said something in one of our voice memos like the healthism where it's like trying to make sure like every morsel of everything that goes into your body is pristine so that you never experience and then again take that to its logical conclusion so that you never what? So that your living matter doesn't ultimately retire. He's gonna, they're gonna. So like accept that. Breathe that all the way in. And then what does that mean about the experience you would like to be having with them right now? That's the question. If they are committed to wholeness and vitality up to that point where they expire, retire, die, whatever, how can you partner with them in the endeavor of wholeness and vitality in this present moment? Because that is all you have.
Mic drop. Just feel like, yes. I think that's kind of everything. Like and no shame and no anything like that for if as you listen you're like, right, I've been in a posture of running away from death. It's just like because we're told many scary stories about death. We're taught to fear death. We're taught to fear grief. We're taught to fear
sensation.
Our bodies. We're taught to fear our bodies. So it makes sense that then it's like, oh my gosh, and it's a process to meet those fears where they're at and eat. It's not like, okay, so now I won't be afraid. Like, I mean, it lives in you. It's a story in you. Like a more present one in me is my fear of my children dying.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not in a project of eliminating that. I think that would be a bit odd. But like the project of when the sharp fear of my children dying arises in the millions of ways it can in my day, partnering with my body and how to tend to that fear coming up.
Yeah.
That's been one of my most recent teachers of like fear of death in general, including like saying yes. I mean, like, yes, my children will die someday.
That's right.
And we certainly hope we won't be around for it. And we know that we don't always get that. And we just don't know. And we just don't know. And I'll be with you if and when, whenever. Like, and really like being tender with myself through that. it seems specific, but it's a very present one for me.
Mhm.
And a lot of what you see, whether it's in parenting, or in how one treats one's own body, a
Yeah.
lot of it is just running away from the terror of either someone else dying or leaving you,
Right.
rejecting you, but
Yeah.
like the death of them either literally or like relationally.
Yeah.
And certainly for yourself, like that, so much of what ends up being unhelpful, often harmful to ourselves, behaviors and thoughts and expressions we give to another is truly just fear of death in one way or another.
Absolutely. Yes.
So that's my reiteration of what you said. And then I would love after the break to hear more about what you want to say about like what's shifted for you in that fear of death through these various experiences, including your experiences with psilocybin. I think that I would be fascinated to hear more.
Yeah.
So does that sound like a good starting point?
It does. Well, and I feel like I've done a lot of talk in this first half. So I actually am really curious if after the break, there's more you want to say, both from like the perspective of like, I think it will make good podcast content, but also like, I'm a new parent. So like, please tell me what do you do with the fear?
I'll talk more.
If you'd like to connect with us, we invite you to join us on Substack.
exanatomy.substack.com is the home for the Experiential Anatomy podcast. It's the place to stay up to date and never miss an episode, even if you're taking a break from social media.
You can subscribe for free, and you can contribute to the sustainable creation of these conversations by upgrading to a paid subscription. Paid subscribers get access to special content like audience Q&As, bonus episodes, and other supportive materials that we've created along the way.
We love it there, and we hope you will too.
Hello.
Welcome back. Welcome back, Jamie.
We are back successfully here in our bodies. How was your break, Joan?
It was good. It was mostly reconnecting my internet. And then I was like, maybe I have time to sing a Taylor Swift song, but then you came back, so then I didn't. But that was going to be my
Damn it.
had my ukulele ready. So
I love that you've got it just on deck, just ready to go.
Just
okay, yeah, you could maybe sing us out with a little something.
No. It just has to.
We'll leave that for the bonus content.
The bonus content.
We'll tell you all about it soon.
In a little while. So do you want to talk about my kids dying?
Death. Yeah. Let's talk about your children, both hypothetically and literally inevitably at some point dying someday.
Point. Totally.
What do you do? Because it is you can't talk yourself out of something that is inevitable by saying, I'm sure everything will be fine. It's not going to happen. Like they are going to die. They're here. They're alive. They're going to die. Like what does that process look like for you internally as a mother?
Yeah. It looks like an ongoing process. You know what I mean? So I certainly wouldn't want to say now I am in some like Zen blissed out state about such things. I will say like I don't know if I was surprised. I didn't know what I was expecting, but I was noticing how much of like my daily experience of being a parent was being really like clutched. It feeling like someone's gripping my heart and gripping my gut, like this like bolt of fear of their being dead. And certainly newborn phase. And there's a thing where, you know, whether you're a physician or not, this fear exists. And there's a natural bit of like, pay attention to the beings that you are connected to and tending to. And there's layers of, you know, these physician mom Facebook groups I'm in, and everyone's passing around fear stories of sudden infant death syndrome and all the things and frantically talking about all the strategies of the best car seats, etc. Like, and all of it feels like this frantic energy of like, oh my God. And very understandable. But then it was just living in me. And I was always like, because babies breathe really weird. So I was like, is he okay? And like, you know, they like pause breathing and you're like, am I watching my child die? And I'm like, no, he's okay.
Totally.
But like, you know, it's sort of, it's a real roller coaster. And I would say the things that have my main position that has helped me the most. And it's also helped me with the fear of my husband dying, which also for years, like since I was in a relationship with him, I would have, you know, he came home later than expected. There's a certain period of time where you're waiting and you're like, well, he's dead on the highway. Like, you know,
relatable.
Oh, so much. And I think in the parenting realm, like, I mean, it's not, there's like the stereotype of helicopter type parent or whatever. And you just understand how one could just start to live in a positioning of like
Mhm.
safe as possible, reduce the risk, as safe as
Mm.
possible. And it's a
Mm.
very, for me personally, my experience of trying to be in that state is that it was very painful and it was hellish to live in. It
Yeah.
meant like I would have moments of connection with my kids and I'd immediately be like so sad that they were going to die someday and it would ruin the
Mm.
moment. And I was just noticing this phenomenon. And I think the thing that helped me the most was as I really got to understand emotions are my body talking to me. Emotions are
Yeah.
simply a conversation my body's having with me and starting to shift my conversation back. I think have I talked about it on this podcast how my husband was diagnosed with cancer last year? I forget if I did. Anyway,
I don't
I'm
know
saying
if you
it
have
now.
actually. Yeah. Yeah.
He was diagnosed with cancer last year and he is now like he's had multiple scans free, but he went through a
Mhm.
period of surgery and chemo and all of that. And
Yeah.
so there was one really potent moment where he was in
Yeah.
surgery and I was like, I felt really overwhelmed with this like terror of him not waking up, which I'm aware can happen, though
Wow.
it usually does. Da, da. And so the
Sure.
positioning, like the kind of the two pieces that I just practice now every time, like that time, an earlier time that I remember kind of consciously doing it with my body was in the middle of the night. And it was
Mm.
my older son, it's when we sort of finally caught COVID and I had this fear in the middle of the night. And so first of all, I recognize all that's happening is that I'm feeling fear versus, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
all that's happening is my body's offering me sensations and she's trying to talk to me versus, I don't know,
Yes.
whatever, like, because sometimes when you don't even realize what's happening, which is I am feeling fear, you're instead
Mhm.
just running away from the fear and you're thinking thoughts and you're planning. And it's like, what's happening
Yeah.
now is I'm feeling fear. And
Yeah.
my body is sharing that I guess we are both afraid of someone we
Mhm.
love so dearly
Mhm.
dying.
Yeah.
That
No
makes
longer
sense.
being in their body, and so no longer being seemingly accessible to us in like the tangible physical realm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's makes sense. So it's not like,
Mhm.
don't worry,
Yep.
they'll be with you in spirit or whatever. It's like,
Right.
yeah, that would be terrible if that
Yeah,
happened.
this matters. It matters.
This
Mhm.
matters. And I bet I am everything you're imagining you would feel, you're actually pre-feeling it now, is what's
Mm.
happening.
Mhm.
You're imagining it
Mhm.
now, and you're like pre-grieving something not happening. And that makes sense. And that is what
Mm.
is happening now. So, like, there's sort of that piece. And then the other ingredient that I found so helpful. So it's sort of just like surrendering to it. Surrender.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yes, it would be so hard. Yes, we don't want it. Yes, we would survive it, I'm sure. But like, yes, it would be so hard. And I will be with you whenever it happens. Like
Yeah.
I will stay with you, self. I
That's
will
right.
stay with
Yep.
you, body.
Mhm.
And and you will not be alone going through a really horrific experience if that's what's
Mhm.
happened. I promise
Mm.
I will treat you well. We will be together and I will love you then so tenderly.
Yeah.
Because like the thing that's been the most helpful for me to realize is like it compounds the already forever, I'm sure, present fear of such things. You love someone, you wish they wouldn't leave, of course. But like the fear of beating yourself up and blaming yourself, the fear of all the ways you'll treat yourself if something bad happens. So like say with my kid, it's like my kid dies in XYZ way. And part of the horrors you're picturing is how you'll blame yourself, how you'll never be
Mm.
able to enjoy things again. Those are the pieces that actually are optional. Like
Yeah.
we don't
Yeah.
have, those don't
Yes.
have to happen if
Yeah.
something horrible happens.
Yep. And that is the part that is a fiction. That's the
Yes.
part that is not inevitable. The death is inevitable.
No.
How you will or will not ultimately receive the experience of the death and then respond to the experience of the death, that part is not determined. It's not inevitable.
Yes.
It is in the realm of imaginative possibility always still.
Yes. Yes. And
Mhm.
so shifting what I'm offering to myself in my imaginative possibility of like,
Yeah.
here's how we could potentially do this. Here's how
Mm.
we will be okay as we're not okay. It will be not
Mhm.
okay. And so like both of them I actually lay down. So like the one moment when Felix was sick with COVID, and I was like, my compulsion was to keep checking if he was breathing, and he was okay. And so I was like, I don't want to do it this time. It's okay that I did it before. I don't want to do it this time. I want to instead be like, hey, if you ever wake up and go to one of your children's rooms and you find them dead, that will be the worst, a horrible,
Mm-hmm.
horrible sensation. We will feel horrible sensations together though, and I will be
Mm-hmm.
with you. And so instead
Yeah.
I soothe myself with that. And for me, that really helps. It helps in that then I'm not acting out and running away from the feeling. So it doesn't stay as long.
Yeah.
And then it makes those fear moments a moment of connection with myself instead of disconnection. So same with when my husband was in surgery. I lay down, I cried. I allowed myself to
Mm.
imagine him dying because it was happening already. So not like surrendering
Right.
to that's what
Yeah.
I was feeling. And I stayed with myself and I like loved myself through it. So I don't
Mm.
have the secret hack to never feeling fear about it. I really don't
Sure.
think that. I mean, if someone
I
naturally
don't
that
think
just
that
happens,
exists.
but
Yeah.
it's sort of course we would feel fear. Of course, we're so primed. People we love, we don't want to lose. Like our bodies want
Yeah.
to feel good with them. Our bodies love them so much. Our bodies don't want
Yep.
their bodies to be apart
Yep.
from us. So it's sort of it all makes sense. We don't have to think we're silly or weird, and we can love
Mm.
ourselves through it. That's all
Yeah.
I've got. Those
Yep.
that's what I'm working with, and it does
Excellent.
really help.
Yep. Yeah. 3 things in response. First thing is I just want to honor you and reflect to you how profound that is and how much of and just on a personal note too, like when we started working together with me as your coach, you were in the midst. One of the first things I remember you telling me, actually, I think
Yeah.
you wrote it in your application for coaching about Francis's diagnosis. And
Yeah.
when we started our conversations, you kind of giving more information about where you all were in that process. And I was struck by it then. And I'm even more struck by it now of just like the way that you have navigated the complexity of an experience that is almost universally regarded as like one of the worst things that could possibly happen to you in your life is like, arguably even worse than your own
Yeah.
devastating diagnosis is a devastating diagnosis that someone you love receives. Like I was
Yeah.
thinking when you were sharing, like in so many ways, like in the first part of this conversation, like it's great to be like, oh, I've kind of mostly resolved my relationship to my own death, but like the deaths of the people I love, absolutely not. Have not resolved that. No way. So it's like
We're on a
there is
journey
still
with those.
complexity around this whole
Yeah.
death thing, the reality of it. And so I just want to like honor you and just tell you how much I just so deeply respect like the way you journeyed through that and are continuing to journey through that with yourself. It's a really profound and beautiful model to be in the presence of. And in that honoring and respecting you in it, just to name like I know the work that goes into being able to find that degree of resilience within yourself and that degree of like coming back to the breath, coming back to like, I will be okay. And that leads me to the second thing is when you were sharing that, I was reminded of a poem I wrote many years ago. Actually, wrote it in a season of life where 2 things were kind of like simultaneously happening. My best friend from high school was unexpectedly killed in a car accident from a drunk driver. And then around the same time, at the time, my best friend's mother had received a terminal cancer diagnosis, brain cancer. And so my best friend was navigating the complexity of like being with her mother, in these last however many moments she would have in her mother's life. And I ended up writing this very short little poem, and it came to me as you were sharing, and I'll just share it here. It's just
Yes.
called What Death Will Do.
Mm.
What death will do. She'll linger too long in empty rooms, hallways with high ceilings, doors that lead to nowhere, and front yard flower beds, just to ask you again if you're listening, just to force you to stop forgetting that you live on no matter what leaves.
Mm. Mm.
And that
Beautiful.
phrase of you live on no matter what leaves is a thing that, I mean, that moment that I'm afraid of being my reality right now is an inevitable future moment. Unless I go first, like I will be experiencing the death of people I love. And I have this awareness a lot of like, in fact, I was talking to one of the teachers at the yoga studio that her mother had died 3 months prior and she hadn't really talked about it much. And as we were talking through it and talking about it, I was telling her how like I have this awareness that like currently I am existing as a human person who myself, my consciousness, and my living matter, my body knows the fact that my parents, the bodies that I came from they're still here. They're still in their bodies. And there is an inevitable future moment where that is no
Yeah.
longer true. And it's every day it's coming closer. And arguably, in the grand scheme of the view of time, it's soon.
Yeah.
And that I will feel a way in my body that is unimaginable to me right now when that moment arrives. And I can't conjure up the possibility of what I can't. And nobody that has already had that experience or is having, it was like she told me it was like comforting for her in a way to hear someone describe that, because in her experience she was like, I can't describe what it feels like to know that my mom isn't here. It's like, so I couldn't have anticipated it in my body in any possible way. And so, there is that's looming on the horizon. And then that feels to me often like the doorway into thinking about all of the other people who are absolutely going to die. That my life, as we continue to age, as we get older in our bodies, what our lives are, what they become is we are surrounded by, inundated with death until we go. Everyone keeps dying until we do. Is just how it works. And you absolutely can. And this does happen. And it's so understandable. And I do believe our bodies are inviting us into something different. To your point of what you were sharing, you can decide to live in a way where that contracts you every single day, increasingly contracts you into yourself, and you refuse to open up and create new attachments, because it is so scary to imagine the pain that you will, if you are doing love the way that love is here to be done, you're going to feel some shit when the people that you have allowed yourself to connect with and attach to are no longer in their bodies. You will. And you can absolutely choose, make that choice, conscious or unconscious. It's largely unconscious, to over time increasingly shut yourself down in response to that reality. Or you can choose to take what I believe is the invitation on the table from your body, who knows that wholeness and vitality is your birthright up until the moment that you leave, up until the moment that your body retires. And wrapped up in that wholeness and vitality is the ability to continue to love well and love deep and attach truly in a non-attached kind of way, which I'll get into in a second. Like, to keep doing that until you leave, and to let it hurt you, let it impact you, let yourself feel the way that it is designed to feel when you have loved, and then you're still loving, but the tangible physical location for you to put that love is no longer available to you. It makes so much sense that hurts. And so then the last thing I'll say is, and this does lead into what you asked before the break, as you were sharing, I realized, like, in regards to my relationship with psilocybin and the way in which that substance, that medicine does, one of the things that it is known for that I have firsthand experienced is that having an intentional, ceremonial, we could maybe even say therapeutic, collaborative relationship, on purpose relationship to that substance, non-abusive relationship to that substance, does either slowly or quickly, like all at once, like release you from the kind of constricted, almost imprisoned feeling of the fear of death, whether that's happening to you in your conscious awareness at every moment, or whether it's just like this kind of unconscious thing that's looming behind you that you don't even know is there, but apparently you're living in your body in a way that is in like alignment with that unconscious fear. AKA not truly attaching, not truly being here because the fear of the pain of the loss is so much. And the thing that came to me, the thing that I remembered is actually when I was on my sabbatical, I was in London. And one of the things I was dealing with internally at the time was I look back and I see this as like the beginning of me starting what I would months later come to realize was my codependence recovery. I was in a relationship with someone that like it was profoundly codependent. We were really hurting each other with each other. And I could not figure out. It had been like 8 years of this like back and forth with this like wonderful person that we couldn't figure this out. And the story that existed in my body is that and again, this wasn't conscious. If you had looked at me like my therapist had many times and said like, asked or said some version of you can survive without being in a relationship with this person, I would have looked at you and said, of course I can. But the way I was living was like in absolute denial of that.
Yeah.
And it has everything to do with my unconscious attachment wounds. I know this now. And so what that medicine so beautifully did for me in that solo journey, and anyone who has done psychedelics with intention might understand what I'm describing here. The very beginning, when you're kind of ramping up into the space that is being kind of held for you by you for about 6 hours on this substance, that very beginning, you're loosening your grip. If you're willing to, you're loosening your grip on what you think is real and true. Your stories are starting to dissolve, and that can be profoundly dysregulating and activating for who you think you are. And so the invitation of kind of the first hour of a psilocybin journey is surrender, 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 surrender. In my opinion, it's the whole point of everything that comes next is getting through that first phase. And what came up for me in that hour, in that journey in particular, the medicine kind of took me in this space of feeling physically, the physical embodied feeling of the death of this person. So where it was like, God has taken it off the table for you to even choose whether or not you get to remain in a codependent dynamic with this individual. And Joan, the feeling in my body, what I didn't know is that really what was going on in that journey is I was being asked to reckon with my perception of death itself, not my perception of a breakup with this person. The feeling in my body really was, and I don't know how I know this, but I knew that I knew it. The feeling in my body was as if this man was dead. And it was the single most excruciating pain I have still, like emotional pain and even physical because of how emotional it was, have ever felt in my body up until this point in my life. And running, and this is the thing about psychedelics and psilocybin in particular, somehow running simultaneous to that, this is the worst feeling I've ever felt, the full experience of this new reality of the absolute definitive loss of this person, running simultaneous at the same time to that feeling was this almost indescribably surprising aliveness of the fact that that feeling was not killing me. I was alive. I was alive. And both of those things were coexisting. And it was like they were coexisting until that, wait, I'm alive. I'm alive. It made me really emotional. Like, I'm alive. I'm alive. Took over. And I realized in a way that kind of I bookmarked and came back to many months later when I did ultimately decide to just take the very sober process of codependence recovery and coming into emotional sobriety and not hurting that person or myself anymore with our relationship and my behavior. What I bookmarked in that moment was, I can survive this. I can survive this. I will live on no matter what leaves. I will. And that, I mean, it's an understatement to say it changed my life because it changed, yes, what I believed was possible in my relationship with my body in that moment regarding that relationship. Yes, all of that. But what it really ultimately, like I said a second ago, changed that I didn't know at the time and honestly didn't even know until this conversation right now, that really what was going on there is that my body was leading me into a deeper truth about the reality of death and what she knows about death, being a body, who we are, actually, our consciousness is eternal. I believe this. No one else has to believe this with me, but I do believe that's eternal. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, just is. But our bodies, living matter, will retire, will expire, will go back also to where they came from, which is, soil, the earth, dirt, whatever, former stardust, future soil, future title of my book, whenever it exists, whatever. This is what she knows, And that's where that title came from, is I am former stardust, future soil, period, or my body is. And so what she knows, what our bodies know about death, is that there is nothing actually to be afraid of there, because you will live on no matter what leaves. And so live now. Live now. That was the takeaway.
Live now. Experience
That was the takeaway of that psilocybin dose. Ultimately, was like, the way you're living, trying to avoid death, is not really living. And it was through the vehicle of that particular, codependent relationship. But that codependence was showing up everywhere in my life. That inability to really fully be here in my body was showing up everywhere. And so it was the beginning, this like crack, this crack in this door, in this doorway that became possible for me to ultimately, eventually, this is what I believe about psychedelics, is like, they show you the door is there, and sometimes they turn the knob and crack it open for you. But the point of integration and the sober relationship you develop with yourself is to, first of all, not need those substances anymore. That is the point. They are teachers for a time period. And it is to show you the door, to maybe open it up a little, and you learn how to consistently walk through. That is it. And so that is how my body has been my teacher in such profound and beautiful ways, regarding like, I will live on no matter what leaves. So those are all my coalescing thoughts.
Thank you for all of them. I actually feel, first of all, thank you for everything you just shared, including the poem you just shared. I had said before we started recording that, it was last week, in the midst of the Florida of it all.
The Florida.
I wrote I'm going to call it a poem. I'm still like, I don't write poems, but I wrote a poem. And it was feeling like it would be potentially right to share it. And based on what you just said about how we return back to where we come from in one way or another, I think I would like to read it for you now.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That's okay. All right, here we go. The title of it right now, at least, is Body Vows. You and me, we've been through some shit together. And yet here we stand, sit, lie, dance, eat, sleep, utterly intertwined. I feel an ache for all the times I've forgotten you. Forgotten who you are, forgotten who I am because of you, forgotten our power, our largeness, our universe. The stories that invite me to forget you in service of other masters, greed, dominance, compliance, accumulation, fear, they still wound me. I can still get lost in their shadows. And yet you are always there, here, actually, waiting, living, loving me and everyone else. I vow to remember as often as I can. I vow to return to you again and again and again, till death do us part, when you and I will become parts of other bodies and minds and love each other still. My thigh embraces her mate. My hand caresses them both. My torso invites breath in and out of my lungs. My lips press together in a holy kiss. I love you. I love you. I love you.
Oh my God, Joan.
Yeah, I wrote it, I think, a little bit after sending you the voice memo and having the diet culture is terrible for bodies. And I was just like, I wanted to write like a love poem to her and a promise to her.
Yeah.
And it's just so wild that what you just said about my current thinking is, this body will die and be metabolized by other living matter into living matter, and will end up in living matter that will inevitably be inside of and then a part of some other human being. It may take who knows how long it would take. and my only the consciousness, who knows, right? But the idea that I'll actually never not be in a loving relationship with her, but will be like a part of other people.
Oh, yes.
I really like that. And so anyway.
Wow. I love that too. Anyway, I wrote that.
What to say? What are you supposed to say?
Beautiful. That was stunning. That was so beautiful. Thank you. And I think that's a perfect way to close out this episode, close out this conversation, close out this season, both because it was just so beautifully and poignantly and succinctly put, but also because it feels like kind of the full circle of what I expressed that like 8 years ago, laying in my bed where I was like, I'm going to be parted from you forever, inevitably at some point. So sad. And to your poetic point, not really, not actually.
Not really. Yeah.
She will be going back to where she came from. I will be going back to where I came from. And the thing that I believe about death being an illusion is that there is no end point to either one of those. Actually, there's nourishment and continuation and regeneration and remembrance, revitalization, all those words inevitably on the quote unquote other side of something that appears to be a destination and even sometimes appears to be a scary one, but actually is neither one of those things, neither scary nor a destination. It is a doorway. Yeah. It's not a destination. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for sharing in these incredibly fun and very apparently from the feedback you and I have received from so many people, like very nourishing and encouraging and supportive conversations. I actually got a message from a sweet person on Instagram the other day that apparently she's been listening to these episodes while all around Scotland, one of my most like holy sacred places that was like the site of my initial awakening. She told me she's been like listening to my voice talking about bodies all over the Scottish Highlands. And I was like, oh my God, you guys kidding me? Like the magic of that is so profound. And I just thank you all so much for being here with us as we, stepped out into this uncharted territory of just, we knew we were having so much fun talking about bodies in private, and we wanted to do it publicly, and we wanted to do it with all of you. And it's been enormously enjoyable. And we are so excited to pick right back up where we are leaving off now. And unless the winds of inspiration move us, which is possible, we intend to, in season 2, just dive right back into talking about death. We're going to have some really wonderful, knowledgeable, skilled guests join us in season 2 to talk about death and everything that means regarding life and living in our bodies. So we're excited about that. And then, Joan, we've got some fun little tasty snacks in between now and then. If you want to share a little bit with the listeners about what they can anticipate coming for them if they join us over on Substack.
Yeah. So we always knew that we wanted to do like well-defined seasons, because that has been, I think for both of us, and I think many, if not all bodies, like a useful sort of way to plan efforting versus recovery. I mean, it does seem like a pretty universal experience. Our body invites us to have a cycle about things, right?
Yes.
And so with that, we would love to offer like a portal of continued connection and community while we're taking time off and then preparing for this future season on death in the spring. Yeah. And so Substack we've decided that's the place where you can come connect with us. And we have some things that will be available even if you're not interested or able to provide any financial support, that even if you just like subscribe for free, you'll get some fun. We're planning to release the full video of me singing Pink Pony Club for real. Yes! So you don't just have to hear the like whispered version at the end of that other episode. I find it really funny that like we're planning for me to share maybe even a couple videos of me singing, and I I guess in the same way that I'm like, I'm not a professional poet. I am certainly not a professional singer. And I am aware that Jamie in a current life is a professional poet and was like used to sing for a living, but I think that's fun as well. So
I
some
prefer
of that
you doing for that exact reason. I prefer yours rather than mine. It's going to
well,
be
that's
really
lovely.
fun. Mm-hmm.
I'm having so much fun with my body singing and singing such an
Mm-hmm.
embodied connecting practice for me,
Yeah.
whether it's Taylor or someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And other things. So some fresh conversations about COVID. That's one that's come up already. We're like, we got to talk about what we all went
Mm-hmm.
through with COVID. And so some
Yeah.
of those conversations will be at Substack. And also more about your experiences with psychedelics. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited to hear more about your thoughts and journey with that.
Mm-hmm.
The initial voice memos that started this whole
It all.
process. So
Yeah.
sort of old episodes that were sort of our first try at the episode. So lots of
Yeah.
like behind the scenes as well as further conversations and a place to have conversations with us because, you can put your comments there. So
Mm-hmm.
we would love if you all came over and joined us. And then some of that content will be specifically a thank you for people who financially support us, and others will be available for everyone. So we'd love if you spent the winter season with us over on Substack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, until we meet again on the regular podcast feeds.
Yes. Our intention is to, this ends, like y'all will be hearing this, we're in the time machine, so you'll be hearing this conversation kind of mid to end of December. We're all going to take the holidays off, as is good practice. And then beginning in January, just weekly, we're going to just offer some really fun, like everything Joan just mentioned, every week, some fun bonus content only over on Substack. And then the literal moment that bonus content runs out, we will meet you back here for season 2. We're really excited about that rhythm. Yeah. So before we move into the dedication, I recognize I did a little reflecting on like how fun this first season has been with you. I'm wondering if there's anything that you want to say about your experience, Joan.
Oh, I think the process of doing this has been like such a nourishing and transformational experience. Like it has connected me back to my body in part because like it's just so many additional invitations to do so,
Yeah.
and so I feel so close to her and feel so inspired and grateful for the opportunity to create something that I really believe in and then have it impact me so positively and profoundly as well. We're co-creating something beautiful that benefits world and self.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say, I know we say it in the credits, but just deep gratitude to the editors and production team that we've been working with and how magical it's been to hear them take our sometimes very coffee or disrupted or disjointed internet glitchy conversations and then weave them into something that I'm like, this is a professional podcast I'm listening to.
So excellent. I'm so impressed every time.
It's so delightful, including thanks for this one, which might be longer for them to edit, I'm realizing. But it makes sense. It's the last one. So, and like, I just have such deep gratitude for you, Jamie. I think like, I can't believe I get to do this with you. And I knew you parasocially before I knew you really. And there's still sometimes like, I'm making a podcast with Jamie Leafish. This is cool. But more than that, that's sort of like that. And then there's like, Jamie, I love her, who's like sort of almost a separate person because you're the real person,
Yeah.
And I just, my life has been forever altered by your work and your art and your friendship now. And I just am so, so grateful. So those are all the ways I'm feeling.
Yeah. I feel the same. I feel a lot of gratitude at the enormous gift of working on this project with you. I feel the same way. I don't know if this will be easy or hard for you to believe, but I feel the same way of like, I get to do this with Joan or Joan Chan or Dr. Joe, however you want to frame it. Like I get to do this with the figure that is you, the knowledgeable physician who creates public work and does medical education from that positioning. I feel really grateful to be working with someone at your level and skill set and capacity. It's such a gift. And particularly when we send these voice memos back and forth to one another for the minisodes, I'm like, this person is awesome and such a gift in my life. And I also feel very grateful to this project for the way we designed the creation of the project for, I had this thought the other day, for keeping us in such consistent communication and resonance with one another, because that has been one of the biggest, if not the biggest gift of, the past few months of working on this project with you, is just like the development of and flourishing of our relationship with one another. And so I'm so grateful to you as well.
Oh, just a love fest over here. That's
Yep.
so good. Well, with that, to close out the season, Jamie, what part of your body would you like to offer appreciation to?
I can't pick one.
I was like, she's going to say not a part.
Actually. You knew I was going to do the whole body, didn't you? You knew.
I had an inkling.
Yep. It's just too, I can't. It's like physically impossible to imagine like narrowing to one particular location or, process in my body, because I just love her so much. And I think like maybe what I will say is like my appreciation for the entirety of my body. Maybe there is a way in which I want to distill down into like a specific process, which once again is just the way in which I have come to discover this partner of my living matter being so much more resilient than anyone ever told me that she was capable of being, than anyone truly, honestly, in my developmental experience ever modeled for me in front of me that she was capable of being. Like going back to like, she's going to die. So what does that mean about how I live in her now? The linear path that is aging, I have this awareness that like, I won't always be able to dance in her the way I can dance in her now. And right now I can't dance in her the way I could dance in her when I was in my 20s. So I better get dancing every moment I possibly can, because I want to feel everything. I want to feel everything. I truly mean it. I want to feel everything, because it is going away. It will go away. And that's not because she's doing anything wrong. And that's not bad design. I think it's so brilliant because it puts us all here if we let it. When I look at my life and I look back on my life, I'm like, the truest way to understand what was always happening and always has been happening and always will be happening is she is constantly pulling me into the invitation of remembrance of what is here right now. And my capacity truly, if I trust her, to feel all of it. And the shorthand word for that is resilience. And I'm so grateful for the process, the mechanism that is resilience in the body, because I have everything I have in my life now because of her and her capacity to achieve, maintain, and expand resilience. And I feel so grateful. So that is my dedication for today, is I dedicate this episode to resilience.
Yes. Beautiful. I'm just like resonating and offering gratitude for the same. And I hope all of you, listening, it's okay if you don't resonate, because we're all at different places and phases. And I think my hope for everyone listening is that you've heard a door has cracked at some point during you listening to our conversations about what if your body loves you? What if, like just one of the truths that we've offered that are true for us, it's an invitation for you to consider what if they were true for you. Yeah. That means the project's been a success. So that's my invitation to those listening, for sure.
Speaking of poets, it is what David Whyte, one of my favorite poets of all time, what he calls the beautiful question is the question, what if I could?
Oof. Gorgeous.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't actually want it to end, but it must. So
me too. Well, it's not goodbye. It's see you later. And in fact, here's the real high note is I will hear you later when you tell me all about how Taylor Swift was. And everyone else will get to hear that too next week on the minisode. So we will see all of you then. And then we'll see you on Substack. And then we'll see you in the spring for season 2.
See you in season 2.
Bye.
Bye. This is Experiential Anatomy. Thanks for listening. I'm Joan Chan.
And I'm Jamie Lee Finch. Experiential Anatomy is co-hosted and created by us.
Amber Wyndham is the editor. Julia Wyndham is the supervising producer.
Senior producer is Elizabeth Wyndham. Aaron Beatty leads our community management.
Our theme music is Park Pier 3 by G's Guy.
If you have any thoughts, questions, or stories to share about this week's episode, email us at exanatomy@gmail.com.
Please follow, rate, and review on your favorite podcast platform. And remember to join us over at exanatomy.substack.com.
Experiential Anatomy is produced by Windhaven Productions. Flawless. We're getting so good at this.
Totally. That was my ukulele falling.
Is your ukulele also dying?
She's okay. She's okay.